Welcome back. You're watching NewsX. My name is Vineet. Well, the black box and the digital video recorder have been retrieved in the Boeing 787 Dreamliner crash. While investigation into CCTV footage and other black box recordings is underway, several conspiracy theories are also flying. These are the conspiracy theories doing the rounds. We're going to take them one by one. Theory 1. The crash coincides with PM Modi's visit to Canada for the G7 summit. Theory number 2. Remote sabotage due to non-functioning AC and cabin lights, due to this being a high-tech aircraft. Theory number 3. Fuel contamination, which could have shown the quantity to be normal. Theory number 4. Well, Turkish tech responsible for maintenance of all Air India flights. Theory number 5. Boeing whistleblower John Barnett warned of major quality issues in the company's 787 aircraft. Theory number 6. Intentional frequency jamming with the communications of the flight. Let's take them one by one with our experts who are joining us at this point in time. With us on the show to talk more about this is Mr. James Healy-Pratt, expert of international aviation. Mr. Pierre Henry, aviation expert, also joins us on the show. Last but not the least, Mr. Sumit Peer, senior political commentator on the show as well. All right, Pierre, I'm going to begin with you. What do you think happened over here? You know, I read out 6 conspiracy theories. You're free to pick up one, whichever you think is closest, and assess what happened to this Dreamliner for a couple of decades since its inception, which is 18 years to be precise. The Dreamliner has been considered to be a foolproof, modern tech, impermeable aircraft. This is the first hull breach that has happened for this aircraft. What do you make of it?
So indeed, you have about 1,270 Dreamliners that have been constructed and flying, and you had no hull loss like this in 14 years, which makes it one of the safest, used to be one of the safest aircraft. So I think for the theory on the whistleblower, it truly shows that you have an aircraft that has a very good design, that is extremely safe. And even though you have an accident, you can easily say somebody blew the whistle years ago. Sadly, we know statistically accidents are going to come. Now, as pilots, as engineers, our goal is to make sure they arrive only once every, let's say, 2 or 3 million hours or so. But the point I want to make is, for the whistleblower theory, I'm not sure you can really relate it to that, because you've been seeing 14 years of impeccable flying safety record. And second theory I like to jump on is fuel contamination. What is important to understand with fuel contamination is the aircraft started its engine earlier, and the two sides, the two engines, use their own fuel tanks. And for the two sides to have at the exact same moment fuel contamination hitting the engines, creating loss of power, it's extremely unlikely. So usually what you see with fuel contamination is you might lose one engine, but losing both engines, if that's the case, is going to be extremely unlikely. So right now we cannot rule it out at 100%. We will have to wait about a month-ish in the preliminary report. But it's so unlikely that I'm not even sure in the last 20 years that caused a crash of a dual-engine aircraft. So I think those two theories are a bit far-fetched. And from the footage that we have, what we can tell is that they had weight to thrust issue for a reason we cannot say right now. Might be loss of power, might be partial loss of power, but what we know for certain is that 37 degrees is a temperature where you're going to lose some thrust on the engines, yet your maximum takeoff weight should be computed to make sure with one engine remaining, you can still climb if you put the gear. So what we can say from those images right now is that the aircraft was still controllable. They tried to pitch up toward the end, yet we don't know exactly what thrust was coming out of the engines. So it's almost normal nowadays that you have all those theories coming out, but it looks like it's a fully technical / aviation related issue on an aircraft that had an impeccable flight record until yesterday.
Pierre, what about frequency jamming? Is that something which can be done on a standalone basis? Frequency jamming, in colloquial terms and in modern warfare terms, is also referred to as a tactical weapon to bring down aircraft. Do you think that is something that could have also been used? You know, we are living in a world which is witnessing several wars. We just got out of a war with Pakistan just about a month ago. Is that a possibility that we can completely write off, Pierre?
I'm going to jump on my experience. I used to be an instructor on Rafale. I flew Rafale for the French Navy for years. We jam each other flying fighter aircraft. It's in the design, something we do. It doesn't make you fall out of the sky. The type of jamming you can have an impact on nowadays that's going to be annoying, I'm not saying dangerous, annoying for commercial aircraft, is mostly GPS related jamming, spoofing. And on a takeoff phase like that one, won't be an issue. Could be an issue if you come back in terrain with already some issues on your navigation system, and now you have GPS spoofing. That could add up and lead to maybe a bad decision, a bad navigation. But on takeoff like this, I would rule it as very, very, very unlikely, honestly. Very, very unlikely.
And Pierre, what about pilot error? The theory is that, he had about 3.5 kilometers of a runway to figure out if this aircraft was takeoff worthy. And that is something pilots can ascertain perhaps in the first 2,000 meters. Is that a theory that you think is palpable, is viable in this case, that the pilot could have stopped this aircraft on its tracks before trying to climb?
I truly trust the way pilots are selected and trained. Losing an engine on takeoff or during the takeoff roll is something we train on the simulator every 6 months. So it's really a drill that we know. And you see every month-ish an aircraft with an engine fire or an engine issue on takeoff, and usually doesn't lead to a crash. Why? Because we are fully trained on this drill. But what you need to understand is that indeed takeoff basically has two phases. First phase, until what we call V1, you're going to accelerate and you're going to decide if you go flying or not. If you lose an engine during this first initial acceleration, you're going to abort the takeoff and you're going to stop. Once you're past V1, you have so much energy, you won't be able to stop before the end of the runway. So you go fly. Because with one engine only, if you do the procedure correctly, it's going to work even if it's 37 degrees. So we know they did a mayday on the radio. We don't know exactly when, but you can accelerate past V1, meaning you're committed to fly, and now you have an engine failure. So now you have to deal with it. Worst case scenario for a pilot is having a dual engine failure after V1. Yet it's extremely rare. When I'm saying extremely rare, I think I can't even think of an airline there that had a dual engine failure on takeoff in the first 3,000 meters. I think last time was Sully, but he was already at 600 meters. It was 2009 with a 320 in New York that ended up on the Hudson. So it's really something that is highly, highly, highly unlikely. And losing both engine on takeoff after V1 is going to lead to major issues. But saying it's pilot responsibility, honestly, right now is way too early because we weren't in the cockpit. We don't know exactly what happened and with what information they took their decisions. So we'll have to wait about 30 days for the preliminary report that's going to answer on the energy state of the aircraft, on the thrust of the engine. And even though everybody wants answers now, putting the blame on the pilot wouldn't be fair. And as a pilot myself, it's not something I'm going to go toward because we don't know yet.
Pierre, there's a lot being said about Boeing. There's been a lot said about Boeing as well. That they're playing with fire. They are outsourcing equipment which is not qualitative. And that is the reason, a number of countries with Boeing aircrafts are sitting on ticking time bombs. What do you have to say about that? A couple of their whistleblowers have been neutralized as well.
What I can say, I got trained in 2017 on the MAX before all the accidents. I still fly the MAX as passenger with my kids for a very simple reason. The reason is you have about 60% of the fleet worldwide that is equipped with Boeing, and you have 100,000 to 150,000 flights a day worldwide that doesn't lead in crash. So there is some Boeing bashing, we can say, going on in the medias. People are afraid of Boeing, but Airbus had its crashes in the 90s, in the 2000s as well. And I think it's more like a point of focus of personnel. But again, you have 60%-ish of the fleet that fly Boeing. So out of the number of flights daily, it's normal to have sometimes engine failures, to have sometimes landing gears that do not come down, stuff like that. But you shouldn't make the mistake of thinking it's due to Boeing, when sometimes it's due to the maintenance, or it's due to, we talked about it earlier, sometimes human factor, pilot error. So because it's a Boeing doesn't mean Boeing is the root cause of the accident. And the statistic, again, I like to emphasize, is the Dreamliner had been flying for 14 years without a single crash. And I'm pretty sure a lot of car manufacturer or boat manufacturer would like to be able to have such a safety statistic to bring up.
Pierre, one last question before we let you go. I'm going to bring in James after that, and then Sumit. You said that the probable cause, outside of any investigation or investigative conclusions, could be that the loss of power or partial loss of power. Do you think why do you think something like this could happen? Could this happen because of some misadventure by the ground staff? Is that a possibility?
Yes, so partial loss of power could come for a lot of reasons. One could be something that gets ingested in the aircraft. Another one would be an issue with a particular engine. What we see on the footage is some sort of dust as they take off. So maybe that means they went past the end of the runway or just really at the end of the runway. Other theories, like there was some smoke coming from the engines, we can't tell for sure right now. So you could have another issue, which is taking off without enough airspeed. So if you end up taking off without enough airspeed, it's either because your power wasn't high enough, or, and that's an important or because you put in the system information that weren't the good one. Every single time you take off, you're going to tell your system what your weight is, what the temperature is, and it's going to come up with what we call a flex takeoff, a use of your engines that is going to be perfectly computed for the length of the runway, your weight, the pressure, and the temperature. And the reason why we do flex takeoff is to minimize the pressure on the engines, because it's going to go out, so it's going to have a lot of pressure on the engine, minimize noise, minimize fuel consumption as well. And as a crew, if you're taking off on flex and you realize something isn't going as planned, you should go full power to use all the thrust available. So that's really something we're going to be looking for. With what percentage of the thrust did they initiate the takeoff? Did they change it during the takeoff? Did they change it after takeoff? And that's going to be absolutely key, because let's say they put wrong inputs in the computer, or wrong weight or wrong temperature, and the aircraft doesn't accelerate as fast as it should. You either reject if you know it before V1, or when you discover it, you go full power to make sure you have enough energy. And if you do not, you can end up underpowered at a speed where you cannot really fly the aircraft anymore. And when the aircraft tends to decelerate, the entire fuselage is going to start acting as an air brake. So you have like a power curve. When you go too slow, the only way is down. And that's what we see at the end of the flight. So the question is, why were they so slow? And chances are it's going to be power/configuration related, or both.
Pierre, really appreciate you taking out the time and speaking to us. And thank you so much for that clarity. Really, really, really means a lot. All right, let me bring in Mr. James Healy-Pratt into this conversation as well. James, you